All right, everyone. There is a big controversy happening right now in the world of the Olympics. And we're not talking about the Israel stuff. We're actually talking about a completely separate controversy, one that has arisen as an inevitable byproduct of transphobia. Something I've repeated time and time again is that transphobia, especially that produced by TERFs, always, inevitably, leads to misogyny against cis women. So there is always this irony when cisgender TERFs try to claim they can always tell and do their transvestigating stuff, because it almost always ends up hurting cis women more in the end. Because whenever they target a cis woman and claim they're trans, it's sort of like a never-ending, like, why won't you admit it? Why won't you admit it? And so they will just, for, like, years harass a cis woman because said cis woman won't lie and say they're trans, and they won't give up until they've finally gotten an admission, right? This ideology of TERFism is just about as misogynistic as it gets. It is objectively misogyny. And so, naturally, when the Olympics came around and not a trans boxer, I should say, a cis boxer ended up winning in a match against another woman, the right basically just decided to formulate a narrative about how she's a trans woman when she's just not. The only argument or, like, evidence, quote unquote, they have for this is apparently slightly elevated testosterone levels, something that is very normal. Just that happens among athletes, especially, well, that happens among women all over. Like, cis women across the board have elevated testosterone levels due to a variety of different reasons and conditions. But in the case of athletes, it's expected. Like, yeah, there are some people who are very genetically gifted. They are very strong. They produce more testosterone than other people do, cis women and cis men, and those people tend to have a bit of an advantage. And I think she was disqualified because of her testosterone levels being so high. Expected of very top-tier athletes, but they do have limits. But now, apparently, her testosterone levels measure pretty normally, like they're within the acceptable range. And now she's back to competing. She won some big fight. People lost their shit, I guess, and now she is forfeiting the match. This apparently the story is now that she is in tears after forfeiting the Olympic match due to gender dispute. This has gotten to the point where they full-on screamed her off of the stage, supposedly in tears, pretty much. Transphobia has legitimately gone so far that cis women are not safe from it anymore. And this is the inevitable outcome of this TERF movement that the left and the trans community has been warning of for years and years and years, that if this shit continues to be normalized, eventually, like, cis women are going to be in danger too from these people. And it's happening. I believe recently there was a story where a cis woman was assaulted in a woman's bathroom by another woman because said woman thought that the other cis woman was trans. It seems the statistics continue to prove that you are far more in danger as a trans person in the bathroom you identify with than anyone else is in your presence in that bathroom. Trans people seem to be the real ones in danger here. And now the derangement over the possibility that someone could be trans is going to reflect and cause negative outcomes for cis people. This is why transphobia is an everybody problem. Not just because of the natural, empathy you should have for trans people and the bullshit they deal with, but also the fact that bigotry does not have limits. Bigotry is about hate, and hate does not end. There is no reasonability or compromise when it comes to hate. If you allow hate to grow and fester in a society, eventually you will be the target of that hate too. So even if you're just a selfish, uncaring person, you should care about this stuff, because nobody is safe. Like this stuff might ruin your life if you're a cis woman and a group of psychos online decide that you look too masculine for their liking. They will ruin your life and career trying to prove that you're actually trans.
Only a few punches were thrown in yesterday's opening Olympic match between Algerian boxer Iman Khalif and Italian boxer Angela.
To be clear, Rising and The Hill are not like the greatest news outlets, by the way. I don't necessarily take their reporting at face value, so there's probably going to be a little bit of to some things they say here on my end, but hopefully this is a relatively objective framing of the situation. Like, the Rising can be either like giga horrible or completely fine. We're flipping the coin here.
Carini, before Carini dropped out, which is a rare occurrence in boxing. Now, the entire match lasted 46 seconds. Many are raising their eyebrows at the Algerian boxer Iman Khalif. Khalif was disqualified during the 20.
So she was disqualified, I think, because of like heightened testosterone levels like years ago. But like I said, this is not like a sign of being trans. There are countless cis women around the world that have heightened testosterone levels. If you're a guy, I can assure you there is a woman somewhere on the planet, a cis woman somewhere on this planet with higher testosterone naturally than you produce. That she exists somewhere. It is just a thing that happens.
2023 World Championships and sanctioned by the International Boxing Association for failing to meet gender standards because of high levels of testosterone. The president of the IBA said at the time, quote, based on DNA tests, we identified a number of athletes who tried to trick their colleagues into posing as women. According to the results of the test, it was proved that they have XY chromosomes. Such athletes were thus excluded from competition.
Generally, the people who can tell if someone is trans are trans people because they've gone through, like, the process of medical transition more often than not. And from what I've heard, Iman Khalif, I think her name is, she does not demonstrate any of those, like, signs or pieces of evidence of, like, any, like, signs of gender transition medically whatsoever. So not only is there no record of her having been trans, but on top of that, trans people that generally can recognize, like, hints at that kind of thing recognize nothing. They don't see anything. This is very clear, or very clearly a cis woman. Supposedly, she does have a DSD, though. She's from a country where it's illegal to be LGBT. Yeah, on top of that, like, yeah, she's definitely not trans. I do believe she has a DSD, though. Correct me if I'm wrong. Difference in sexual development, like just basically a very minor DSD, which is just a form of intersex. Very, like it just has to do with, like, having a difference in like your genetics and the amount of testosterone you put off. It can range anywhere from, like, having multiple types of reproductive system and multiple, like, genitalia and stuff, or it can be as simple as, like, maybe you just have a higher T level than most cis women do, or maybe you have a higher estrogen level than most cis men do. That's the most common type of DSD, and that seems to be what she has from what I've heard.
But the International Olympic Committee cleared Khalif to compete anyway in the game, saying, quote, everyone competing in the women's category is complying with the competition eligibility.
She wasn't disqualified for testosterone levels. The test was never revealed. So are they lying here when they said she was disqualified because of her testosterone test, like her testosterone levels? Were they just lying here? I wouldn't put it past Rising to just lie or get something wrong, to be fair, but, just double checking. Because I've heard that from multiple sources.
Rules, they are women on their passports, and it's stated that this is the case, that they are female. Now, after the match, the Italian athlete said, quote, I felt a severe pain in my nose, and with the maturity of the boxer, I said, enough. Carini then said, quote, I am not here to pass judgment or pass judgment if an athlete is this way, and in that sense, it's not up to me to decide. The Italian premier, Giorgia Meloni, criticized the match, saying,
yeah, apparently the other boxer was like, she punched me too hard. Wah, she might be trans. Not saying she is, not saying it's bad if she is, but, might want to look into that. I really hate that that's, like, the immediate sore loser response for athletes now, is they're going to accuse their opponent of being trans. We've seen that happen with that one roller skater lady who, like, came in, like, 87th place to some roller derby and got pissed off that a trans woman beat her, but said trans woman lost, and so did the lady in question, lost to a little kid. Because it was fucking roller derby. It was just a nothing thing. It was like a fun like competition. I don't even think there was like money on the line. Happened to Simone Biles. Interesting. Yeah, J.K. Rowling was pushing this shit big time. Dude, J.K. Rowling is hilarious because never have I seen somebody who has more evidently had work done to, like, feminize herself. Do you guys remember what J.K. Rowling looked like 15 years ago? Pre-plastic surgery. She does so much shit-talking and judging of the appearances of trans women, and frankly, other women in general. She's so fucking vile and bitter about the appearance of other women, especially, you know, even cis women, as we're seeing with the whole transvestigation thing. This is not the same face. Like, sometimes when you see her ears as well, you can see she's got that sort of, like, tightening thing that goes up, like, around the top of the ear that they'll do. And when you see her look up, you can see her nostrils, and that's also a big giveaway of just how much work she's had done. There's nothing wrong with having work done, to be clear. I'm not shit-talking people who have work done. What I'm shit-talking is the blatant hypocrisy and the bitterness. She is someone who has spent so much money, clearly, to transform herself into the ideal look for a woman in her mind, and then spends all of her time shitting on other women for not meeting the physical appearance threshold and standards that she puts in place for herself and others. She is just a bitter, misogynistic, like, festering cunt. I don't know what else to say. Like, fuck J.K. Rowling. I know this isn't like a hot take, but like, she's not just transphobic. She's also misogynist. She's also just straight up misogynistic.
Saying that she opposes allowing female athletes to compete against athletes with, quote, genetically male characteristics. Khalif fights again on Saturday. There's also one more athlete, Lin Yu-ting of Taiwan, who similarly failed a gender eligibility requirement and was stripped of a bronze medal last year. She will compete in her first match tomorrow.
Now, many conservatives online were furious with the results of the match.
How did she just mushmouth that hard on national television? That goes crazy.
Kick founder Clay Travis tweeted, quote, "Every Democrat leader says this is perfectly fine. The man is a woman. It's way past time for choosing on this issue." Now, Olympic medalists.
I love the right immediately jumping on this. And now the entire, like, unanimous, like, unless you're just lying about this story, everyone knows that the boxer in question is a cis woman. And so all the conservatives who jumped on this story now have egg on their face and look fucking stupid because they all jumped to claim this is a trans person when they weren't a trans person. It was just a cis woman.
Sharon Davies tweeted, quote,
They would have been stupid even if they were complaining about a trans boxer, to be clear, but now they look even dumber because they were wrong about the initial premise in the first place.
IOC are negligent in their duty to care to female boxers, knowingly putting males with a huge advantage in the ring with females.
Who the fuck is Clay Travis? No clue. No one important. None of these people are important. They all bought blue check marks. Like, the fact that the tweets we're going to see are from people who pay for blue check marks tells you that they are not fucking important.
And these were hardly the only people to speak of. My social media feed right now is nothing but outraged. Many of them conservatives, others.
I'm guessing this guy is the right-wing host and this lady is the left-wing host. If there even is a left-wing host anymore. How many hosts have they cycled through on this show? Jesus Christ.
As well, J.K. Rowling, who obviously...
Who remembers when it was Sagar and Crystal Ball? Who remembers that? And, like, they would just post cringe, but it was, like, usually kind of balanced cringe. What happened to those two people? Where are Crystal Ball and Sagar today? Her name was Crystal Ball. Yes. Did they cease existing? Breaking points? Interesting. None of them got that gas.
The Harry Potter author has been very outspoken on issue of trans people in women's spaces, said, could any...
This isn't even a story about trans people in women's spaces, though. This is a story about people who think that trans people in women's spaces is such a problem that they lost their shit at a cis woman and absolutely cucked themselves going hard against a cis woman and ended up being the real ones, the real, like, destroyers of hardworking women's careers in sports, like exactly what they accuse trans women competing of being. Like, they did what they accuse trans women who compete in sports of doing, which is destroy a cis woman's career in sports by harassing her until she, like, fucking conceded, I guess, her victory. I don't even know.
Picture, has a picture of the two boxers. Could any picture sum up our new men's rights movement better? The smirk of a male who knows he's protected by a misogynist sporting establishment, enjoying the distress of a woman he's just punched in the head and whose life ambition he's just...
I'm guessing that's J.K. Rowling's tweet. It really is funny how much J.K. Rowling cucked herself here, because she tries to frame the smirk of a male, by the way, yeah. Dude, you know she cannot, like... I bet she got the plastic surgery she got because she thought she looked too masculine. She must, like, really fucking hate men and must have just, like, looked in the mirror, saw herself smile, and said, that smile is too masculine, and then went and got work done for it. Yeah, in all seriousness, she is deranged and, like, insane. Like, the fact that anyone would tweet the words, the smirk of a male, kind of shows how much, like... I love how the right-wing movement has now tied themselves to man-hate. Like, on one hand, they have to be with the actual man-hating movement, that is the TERF group, because the TERF shit is just motivated entirely by, like, man-hate turned deranged, turned to deranged levels, and, like, just kind of overflowing. Now the right is tying themselves to that movement after a decade of being, like, the anti-feminist movement. It's so bizarre. It's so... like, right-wing politics just makes no fucking sense. Today, Iman Khalif won her QF bout, and next Tuesday she'll compete for a place for a medal. Okay, wait, I thought she... Oh, sorry. I thought she forfeited the match. Was it just one match, but she's still in it? Okay. All right, if she's still in it, then I guess we're cool. I mean, obviously we're not cool. This is still fucked, but, I mean, at least it's not Jover for her, right?
Shattered. Hashtag Paris 2024. A lot of commentary from people on the right noting that this is a man, describing this as a man beating up a woman and for sport, which is very despicable, detestable. I will say, so this person, this athlete, does not identify as trans, just identifies as a woman.
Right.
In Algeria, it is illegal to transition, I understand. Now,
yeah, this is very clearly not a trans athlete, considering she comes from a country where you cannot legally get access to gender-affirming care, okay? Like, I'm sorry. Maybe if we're talking about a British athlete or an American athlete, you could at least, like, suggest there's a possibility that medical records are just sealed and it's been kept secret. But in this case, it's like, when did she transition? How? Like, how? She comes from a country where you're not allowed to be trans. They don't have the medical care legally available to do that. She's cis.
Now, this person failed prior tests to determine...
I love how they're like, this person, they are so embarrassed to say she. Even though we're talking about a cis woman here, not a trans woman, a cis woman, they're still so embarrassed to say she because this guy probably spent the last few days dunking on this athlete, saying it was probably saying that this was a situation of a trans athlete owning a cis athlete, and now he's embarrassed to admit he was wrong. That's what I'm guessing is happening here, and so he keeps saying they.
I think they're best described as an intersex person, probably, for having high levels.
Well, no. The actual term is someone with a DSD, a difference in sexual development. If you were actually talking about the real medical terminology, like that would be used in the medical field today, they would refer to her as having a difference in sexual development, or a DSD. These can range from a wide variety of different outcomes. Some people with DSDs might have, for example, they might be born 100% on the surface. You're like, that is a cis male. And they've got, like, you know, they have a penis, they have testes, they have presumably a male reproductive system. They test positive for XY, or they have XY chromosomes, just like any cis male would have. But then maybe they get an ultrasound or an X-ray or whatever at some point in their life, and it turns out they've got a uterus inside them and have their whole fucking life. That is an example of a difference in sexual development and a completely true story, by the way. In the case of Iman Khalif, I think more likely than not, she just has heightened testosterone levels, which is a very low-tier, simple DSD. The term intersex is now considered very outdated and is not used in the medical field anymore because it's not very accurate due to, like, if you've got a cis woman in every way in front of you who just has a slightly heightened testosterone level, intersex kind of seems like an over-the-top umbrella term to lump that person into. So DSD is what's currently used for anyone, curious.
Of testosterone, certain genetically male characteristics that many people would probably argue that they should not be competing against women who don't possess the same biological characteristics.
Notice how much the goalpost is now moving? How now cis women have to be excluded from sports and women's spaces because they were born with a difference in sexual development. And so now they're extending this, like, it's so weird how on one hand the right argues that, like, the left hates men and men are under attack, yet meanwhile they claim males are dangerous and we need to protect our girls from these horrible males, which are actually women. It's so bizarre, man. I guess it lines up because in the end they're still hating women at the end of the day, but it's odd how much they have embraced man hate. Because TERFs are a man hate movement that is, like, festered into beyond that point, right?
Would seem to be most fair.
They think they're hating men, but they're really hating women. TERFs are.
Right. Now, the IOC does provide a framework to international federations, but it's non-binding. So they didn't do any testosterone tests. We know that much. They said they did biochemical tests. And we know that neither of these athletes identify as transgender. I think it's a very interesting scenario where you have had a lot of conservatives argue that athletes need to compete with their...
It's not an interesting scenario. The conservatives were just retarded and wrong, and now they look like idiots because they were very publicly wrong, and now they all have to go, okay, well, maybe we shouldn't have intersex cis women allowed in sports too. It's like, okay, man, when we're really moving the goalposts this much where we have to start excluding cis people from participating in the sports that they were born, that align with the gender they were born into, like, at that point, we're just trying to keep the culture war burning at this point, clearly. Like, they're desperate.
Their gender assigned at birth. There are situations where people are born intersex, and they are not transgender, and they are assigned a sex at birth.
By the way, if a cis person having an advantage over other cis people in that sport is a problem that should disqualify them, why the fuck are we not calling for athletes like Michael Phelps to have their records stricken from the Olympic record, and for future genetic anomalies like him to be disqualified? Oh, wait, because there was no culture war about this topic when he was swimming, and we only care about, like, the possibility of it being a trans person because then we can get clicks and push the culture war and make money? Oh, okay, cool. These people will never, ever, ever apply the standard to cis people who have a genetic advantage that has nothing to do with DSDs. They will never apply the same standard. They only fucking care because now they have to cope about the existence of DSDs and they have to cover and damage control for the fact there's a big public story about the existence of the sex spectrum. A big point the right has been able to hammer home time and time again is the widely and broadly believed idea that sex and gender are the same and there are only two sexes. Yeah, Logan Paul, like one of the worst people on the internet, also went after Iman Khalif as well, calling her a trans woman and claiming that she's a man, like, pretending to be a woman and trying to win as well. So yeah, the Paul brothers are also on the transphobia train, and in case you guys are wondering if you needed another reason to hate the Paul brothers. And God, I really need to see Logan Paul just get fucking... I'm gonna say it. I hope that I hope that Mike Tyson kills him. Just straight up. I hope it's like Bruce Willis, Pulp Fiction, not throwing the fight. I hope he goes all in on Logan Paul, goes for the ear. I want to... In Minecraft. Oh my God, Zan is a psycho. So true. Zan, you're fed posting again! Wait a second, guys. Zan has always fed posted? I love that like nobody normal in my community cares about those messages because they're like, Zan Fed posted about a bad person in private. Nice.
Birth, that is the closest to how their body developed. And I think that exposes some cracks in this argument.
No, Mike Tyson is going to fight Jake Paul. Oh, it's Jake, not Logan, my bad. I mix them up because they're the same person in my mind. Like, they're just an amorphous blob of like, I hate them, you know? And Paul is one of my least favorite names to ever exist, so, yeah, I really hate the Paul brothers for so many reasons.
And that you have to compete with the gender assigned at birth, and it does give some credit to the people who are saying the best way to determine fairness in terms of sports and the advantages you have that are gender-based are tests of testosterone, are tests of hormones and testosterone present in the body. It seems to be much more clear-cut, given that...
Well, right, but this person previously failed those tests.
Right, that's true. And I think that...
I love how he's trying to still hold on to the idea that she could still be trans, coming from a country where it's illegal to be LGBT. I don't think they have particularly good like medical coverage and care there and whatnot. So I don't know if you can get much elective like surgery for the sake of transitioning. Like it's just such a like these people live in fucking La La Land. They don't live in real life. They have to come up with like conspiracy theories to not look stupid when they jump the gun and attack somebody. It's so fucking funny, dude. Unfortunate that Tyson is a Trump supporter? Oh, Mike Tyson, not Chris Ava Tyson. Okay. I don't know why, but I had different person on my mind. Is Mike Tyson a Trump supporter? You know what? His only redemption is to knock Jake Paul's jaw off into the crowd. Like, just like to punch him, and it's like in a cartoon when like a character punches a robot and the entire jaw comes off and goes flying. That's what's gotta happen to one of the Paul brothers when they fight him for Mike Tyson to redeem himself.
It would be much better if we had consistent testing for all athletes of testosterone if we're going to have a scenario where people are competing, we have transgender athletes. That is...
I love how we're already moving the goalposts too here. We're talking about this vague issue of transgender athletes being a problem to try and like cope post about how wrong they were to harass this cis woman. And they're still trying to like defend it in the most like copium way possible. In Minecraft, Mayor Abe, obviously.
This has been determined. 2 years of HRT in many cases is what equalizes the playing field. Mm-hmm. And testing the testosterone levels is important as well to ensure that it's working and it's consistent because there are always outliers. And for some, you know, sometimes you're still faster. They've done tests of track and field sprinting after 2 years. And so for some sports, it could be 3.
Dude, she's not even arguing the point that she wants to argue well. Do you guys want to hear the actual strong argument that the anti-trans and sports people have? This is their strongest argument, and even this argument falls the fuck apart. Their argument is that the advantage that trans people will always have over their cis counterparts that will give them, an unfair advantage is the likelihood of having trained while identifying as the opposite sex or gender. So the argument would be that, like, if you've got a trans woman boxer, for example, even if she's been trans for like 5 years, if she had been training for 10 and spent 5 years training with like higher testosterone levels, more likely, and the, identifying and having the body of a man, then presumably that benefit would carry over even post-transition. I don't know how strong that point is. It might literally be complete bullshit, for all I know. Like, it is very commonly used, and it is probably the strongest argument I've seen used by these people in debates because it typically doesn't have a good response. But that is actually the argument that if she wants to make against trans competitors, she should be making, because it would make the most idiots agree with her. But these idiots on Rising aren't even good at like making transphobic arguments. Maybe it's because I've heard so many transphobic arguments I can pick out like the strongest ones I've heard, but they're all bad. They're all dumb arguments. None of them hold up to like scrutiny.
3 years, but really understanding that biology is more complicated than we just have a gender assigned at birth and we are that gender.
I mean, in 99% of cases, it's not more complicated, but there are certainly outlier cases where it is more complicated. Yes.
And it seems like we have 2 outlier cases here.
outlier cases, by the way. This is always their copium response to the existence of people with DSDs, by the way, because they'll always argue there's just two sexes. We have a binary gender and sex distribute. Like it's binary, right? And then you say no, it's not. The scientific community considers it a spectrum, and here's why. And then you explain like the way that the scientific community views sex is more so a distribution of sexual characteristics, both both hormonal, chromosomal. I believe it goes like down to your physical features, such as your reproductive system and your genitalia. These are all factors that'll play into where you fall on the sex spectrum. This includes height and your muscle density, your bone density. These are all factors to put into place, and that determines where you fall on the spectrum of biological sex. The existence of people with DSDs is a very clear wrench in the idea of a binary. So when you bring up that people with DSDs exist, they are acknowledged by the medical community and there's no debate about their existence. They have to find a way to acknowledge that, discredit it, and maintain the binary. They have to find a way. So what they do is they try to claim that people with DSDs or intersex people, because they don't even know the modern terminology, they like just learned about intersex people and have just started making their response to things. They don't even know that DSD is the actual term yet. Pretty good. Like it's a really good show of how these people have their talking points fed to them and they don't actually know what they're talking about. Because if they did, and they did even any research whatsoever, they would know that currently difference in sexual development is what the scientific community and medical community use, not intersex. Intersex has been out of parlance for like 14 years now. Anyway, that aside, really ineffective propaganda. I don't know why, but it feels like the right is kind of losing their grip on their propaganda a little bit. Like it feels like they're getting worse at it. Are they trying less? Are they just in like a little bit of going through the motions stage? I wonder what's happening. Xanderhall, like how there is a woman with CAIS, XY chromosomes, internal balls, but are physically female sex in every way, and they aromatize testosterone into estrogen, so female puberty. Let me show you a really good example of someone with a DSD that just kind of completely throws a wrench into the right's conception of sex. This story goes
A 33-year-old
crazy.
man from China had been experiencing stomach pain since his teen years. Several tests were done, but finally
This is
it
in
was
history.
recently discovered that he had been menstruating since the last 20 years. So he identified
Dude, imagine being a guy. You've got stomach pains. You go to the doctor. They tell you, oh, you're menstruating. The guy's first reaction was probably to like wind up a punch at the doctor. like if you're a guy, you have stomach pains, you're pissed off, you finally go to the doctor. The doctor says, I think you're menstruating. You'd be like, like getting ready to defend your manhood. He's like, no. You're actually menstruating. Like you have a uterus inside of you and your mangina is bleeding. I'd be pissed. Where would the discharge go? Clearly nowhere. Clearly whatever discharge was being produced was just like accumulating and causing pain. Can you imagine? They had to like go in there and get the like goopy uterus out of this guy. Poor dude.
as a man all his life and goes by the alias Chen Li to hide his actual identity. Now, he had been experiencing abdominal pain and recurring loss of blood while he urinated since the time he
that
was
is
13 years
awful.
old. So what seemed
Holy shit. So obviously there would be signs of this kind of thing, because apparently since he was 13, around the time when you would start menstruating if you're a cis woman, he's been having these pains, which means he had like 14 years worth of period goop inside of his body not discharging that had to be removed surgically. Stun lock, this is not this is in no way, shape, or form a stun lock. This is literally an example of someone with a DSD and how it can occur in much more extreme ways, right?
like a recurring issue actually became a cause of concern when doctors discovered that Mr. Lee was actually born with a uterus and ovaries. So he had the biology of a man and a woman.
Yep. So yeah, that's just an extreme example of a DSD. And the amount of variance ranges constantly, so they have to refer to these people as outliers or mistakes or glitches or some synonymous word that can acknowledge their existence, discredit them, and also try and maintain the existence of this binary they're so desperate to argue exists that just doesn't. The medical and scientific community don't agree that there's a binary. The government and institutions are slowly adopting the perception that the scientific and medical communities have already, that there is not a sexual binary. And it's just starting to become more and more the undeniable truth. And those that are desperate to hang on and say it's not are continuing to look dumber and dumber and dumber, the same way that, like, back in, the 1990s, we slowly started to realize the God freaks claiming evolution isn't real and trying to ban it and attacking the teaching of evolution were themselves insane. And the right has let go of that shit a while ago because they realized how bad it looked. Now they've moved on to the next thing that they want to attack educating people about, because every time people get more educated about something like evolution, about like the existence of slavery and racism in this country and the Civil War, like any of the things the right lies about or tries to defund education about, when more people know about these things, less people vote for them. And so they've been attacking the education system since as long as the Republican Party has been recognizable to how it is today.
That are good examples for why these standards need to be fleshed out, and that it's not so clear cut. And when we start assessing gender,
I love how they're now trying to argue, so yeah, they need to make even more strict standards so cis women can also be disqualified from competing against other cis women. Jesus Christ. Really? This is where we're at now? We're really at this point?
in this way, this probably wouldn't have been as much of a conversation or a question if we didn't have the huge debate around transgender.
My grandpappy used to told me if it ain't in the Bible, it ain't real. If I recall correctly, guns never show up in the Bible a single time. There's not a single firearm in the entirety of the Bible. Not in any of the books. New Testament or Old.
Gender athletes, because they're women on their passports, they have the same gender they were assigned.
That's the response you come back at that's what you come back at with them when they say that. You're like your grandpa. When they say nothing in the Bible is real, you just reply, "Oh, grandpa, is your shotgun in the Bible? Are there firearms in the Bible? Oh, they're not in the Bible? God doesn't mention fire. Oh, that doesn't sound God. That sounds satanic. Not a single mention? Godly lightning is kind of like a gun? Eh."
And at birth, why were they even being tested or questioned? I don't know that this would have happened 10, 20 years ago.
That's like the best response to conservative Christians, I feel, accusing them of being into satanic shit. Like say like out Bible thumper them. Like think of a thing they're into that's not in the Bible, that's like vaguely like that you could vaguely like shade as satanic the way they do, and just do it to them. Claim they're into something satanic and watch them get mad.
Ago.
Because it's in elite physical competition spaces. Look, you can be a woman for your passport. I'm not trying to take that away from anyone. I'm not trying to invalidate anyone's self-identification. Identify however you want. I support and affirm you. I don't care at all, even in the slightest little bit.
That's nice.
I want the same protections and treatment. We're talking about a specific aspect of human socialization, of competitive sports, where the differences between men and women are significant. In most ways, like our legal system does not in most ways recognize differences between men and women, as they should not.
Well, the fact is that there is recognition of differences between what we label as men and women, which are very broad categories as considered by the medical and scientific community now. Not really men and women, men and women. Man, woman, these are terms that are more socially decided and ingrained. I mean, every word is, but when you say that woman over there, you're just kind of assuming that the person you see walking over there, due to a list of features you can tell on a surface level with a snap judgment, you just assume that person is a woman. Sometimes you're referring to a guy, though. How many times have you seen like a skinnier person with long hair from behind them and you like tap on their shoulder, like, "Hi, ma'am," and they turn around, it's just a cis guy with long hair? Like you turn around, guy's got a beard and stuff, and it's just like, "Yo," with a deep voice, and you're like, "Yo, sorry, you had long hair and you were skinny, and I was gonna ask directions. I'm sorry I said ma'am. I'm sorry about that. I have done that before. And that's not like a case, like there are just you can't rely on people's, surface level physical appearance to know even their gender or their sex. This is all assumptions, and these are just words we use to make communication easier, and it's not always accurate. So the scientific perception of male and female, I should say, is one that these people just are not even in any way researched on. And to be clear, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a medical professional. I've just done a decent amount of cursory research on this issue, and I know that the average conservative lacks the understanding of how the scientific community categorizes human bodies to honestly engage with this issue. They just can't.
But there are some ways in which men and women are different, and in terms of competitive physical ability, that is one of them.
Yeah.
And so you have to separate men and women in sports, even from a young age, if you want it to be competitive at some point. And now we're getting to, you're right, a tricky situation where...
Wait, we have to differentiate men and women to get competitive. What is this like roundabout copium like stun lock they're doing to distract from the fact they got fucking owned by jumping the gun and claiming a cis woman was trans, and now they have to be like, well, we were right to do this all along because, maybe we should also keep cis women from competing against other cis women if they have DSDs.
This person did not transition, so they're not under the transgender category. However, they do have a natural biological advantage in terms of higher testosterone levels that should probably mean that they're not competing against biological women.
Okay, so we're fully like copium posting now. They got like this athlete got like fully confirmed. There's no doubt that this athlete is cis. Most outlets are reporting that this athlete is cis, and yet these right-wing commentators are still trying to find a copium response that still allows them to maintain that this woman shouldn't be allowed to compete. So they could have been right all along. So now they're trying to claim that cis people with DSD shouldn't be allowed to compete, but they would never, of course, maintain that energy with a cis person with some other genetic variable that gives them an advantage as well, right? So they wouldn't maintain the standard with like Michael Phelps if he was still swimming in the Olympics today, for example. They wouldn't keep this energy. Anyway, if you enjoyed me ripping apart the dumb fucks on Rising in regards to their like pseudo right-wing their attempts to like pseudo grift to the right wing, and the right wing host theirs attempts to try and copium post about how he was wrong about this athlete, then consider dropping a like. It really does mean a lot. Helps the channel a ton, as does commenting and subscribing and ringing the bell icon. So if you guys do that, thank you very much. Helps a lot, means a lot. And of course, consider following my social medias, linked down below in the description, including joining my free fan Discord where I announce all my new uploads, streams, and everything like that. I also host events there, including call-in streams, watch parties, and I also announce all my new uploads and streams, so you won't miss anything. We also do gaming events in there, so I hope to see you guys join. And of course, consider possibly donating, subscribing, or gifting a sub on my website, or supporting me through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, Stream Elements, or Patreon if you have the money for it and you feel like it. You can also buy merch as well, so consider it. Thank you so much for watching regardless, though, and have a good one.